Michael Harding walked down Maple Street every morning at exactly 7:15. His neighbors could set their clocks by him. He wore a clean white shirt and a blue tie that matched his eyes. His brown hair was always neat and styled. He carried his leather briefcase in one hand and his coffee mug in the other. Julie Harding followed him out the front door 5 minutes later. She had long blonde hair that caught the morning sun. She wore simple dresses in bright colors that made her look young and happy. She taught second grade at Lincoln Elementary School. The children loved her because she made learning fun. The Hardings lived in a beautiful house on Maple Street in Cedar Falls, Iowa. The house was painted white with green shutters. It had 2 floors and a big front porch with rocking chairs. Julie had planted flowers all around the house. Red roses grew along the white fence that surrounded their yard. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Michael and Julie. They had been married for 5 years. People said they were the perfect couple. They never fought in public. They always smiled and waved at their neighbors. They went to church every Sunday morning and sat in the 3rd row on the left side. Michael worked at Midwest Insurance Group downtown. He had been there for 8 years. His job was to help people when bad things happened to their homes or cars. He would visit people after fires or accidents and decide how much money the insurance company should pay them. His boss, Robert, liked him because he was good with numbers and people trusted him. Julie loved teaching children. She had been at Lincoln Elementary for 4 years. Her classroom was decorated with colorful posters and student artwork. She read stories to her students every day after lunch. She stayed late to help kids who needed extra help with reading or math. The principal, Dorothy, thought Julie was one of their best teachers. On weekends, Michael and Julie did things together. They went grocery shopping on Saturday mornings. Julie pushed the cart while Michael checked items off their list. They bought healthy food and always remembered to get treats for their neighbor's dog. They waved at people they knew in the store aisles. Saturday afternoons, Michael coached baseball for the Cedar Falls Little League. He worked with boys ages 8 to 10. The kids called him Coach Mike. He taught them how to catch and throw and hit the ball. He never yelled at the children when they made mistakes. He always brought orange slices and water bottles for the team. Julie spent Saturday afternoons working in her garden. She planted vegetables in the backyard and flowers in the front yard. Her tomatoes were famous in the neighborhood. She gave bags of fresh tomatoes to anyone who wanted them. Mrs. Peterson next door always said Julie had magic hands when it came to growing things. Sunday evenings, the couple volunteered at the Cedar Falls Animal Shelter. They walked dogs and played with cats that needed homes. Julie was gentle with scared animals. She would sit quietly and let them come to her. Michael cleaned cages and helped with feeding time. The shelter workers, Sarah and Tom, said the animals always seemed happier when the Hardings were there. The neighbors on Maple Street all liked Michael and Julie. Mrs. Peterson lived in the house on their right side. She was 70 years old and lived alone since her husband died. Michael mowed her lawn every week without being asked. Julie brought her homemade soup when she was sick. On their left side lived the Bradley family. Tom and Linda Bradley had 3 young children. Julie babysat for them sometimes when they needed date nights. Michael helped Tom fix his car when it broke down. The Bradley kids loved coming over to see Julie's garden and pick berries. Across the street lived the Johnson family. Bob Johnson worked nights and slept during the day. Michael and Julie always kept their voices down when they were outside in the mornings. They never played loud music or had parties that would wake up Bob. Linda Johnson said they were the most thoughtful neighbors she ever had. People in Cedar Falls thought Michael and Julie had the perfect marriage. They held hands when they walked downtown. They laughed together at the grocery store. They sat close together at church. Julie would look at Michael during the sermon and smile. Michael would squeeze her hand during the prayers. Their house looked perfect too. The grass was always cut, short and green. The flowers were always watered and healthy. The windows were clean and sparkled in the sunlight. The white paint on the house never looked dirty or old. Everything had its place, and everything was in its place. Michael drove a blue Honda that was always clean inside and out. Julie drove a red Toyota that smelled like the vanilla air freshener she kept hanging from the mirror. Both cars were washed every weekend. Michael checked the oil and tires regularly. Julie kept emergency supplies in her trunk like her father had taught her. At work, Michael was known as someone people could count on. When families lost their homes in storms or fires, he was there to help them. He spoke softly and listened carefully to their problems. He took notes in his neat handwriting and promised to get back to them quickly with answers. His coworkers liked him too. He remembered their birthdays and brought donuts to share on Fridays. He never complained about difficult customers or long hours. He ate lunch alone most days, reading books about business or history. Julie's students drew pictures of her and wrote her thank you notes. She kept every picture and note in a special box in her classroom. Parents said their children talked about Miss Julie at home. She made learning feel like playing games. She never raised her voice even when children misbehaved. But some people noticed small things that seemed strange. Tom Bradley saw Michael burning papers in his backyard late one Tuesday night in March. The flames were bright orange against the dark sky. Tom wondered why anyone would burn papers at 2 a.m. Mrs. Peterson heard Julie crying in her garden one Sunday afternoon. She looked through her kitchen window and saw Julie kneeling by the roses with tears on her face. When Mrs. Peterson asked about it later, Julie said she was just sad about a student who was moving away. The mailman Rick noticed that the Hardings got a lot of mail from banks and lawyers. More than most families. He wondered why they needed so many different bank accounts and legal papers. But he never asked questions because it was not his business. These small, strange things happened more often as spring turned to summer. But most people did not notice. They still saw Michael and Julie as the perfect couple living the perfect life on Maple Street. Patricia Wells sat in her kitchen looking at the burned walls where her stove used to be. The fire had happened 8 months ago in August. The flames had destroyed her kitchen and filled her house with smoke. She was lucky to escape with her life. She was 70 years old and lived alone since her husband died. Patricia called her insurance company the day after the fire. A nice man named Michael Harding came to see the damage. He took pictures of everything. He wrote notes on his clipboard and told Patricia not to worry. He said the insurance company would take care of everything. He would make sure she got enough money to fix her kitchen. Michael seemed very kind and helpful. He explained how insurance claims worked. He said it would take some time, but she would get her money soon. Patricia trusted him because he worked for a big company and wore a nice suit. He gave her his business card and told her to call if she had questions. Weeks passed and Patricia heard nothing. She called Michael's office several times. His secretary always said he was busy with other cases. She said Michael would call back soon, but he never did. Patricia started to worry about her kitchen. She could not cook proper meals. She was living on sandwiches and soup from cans. In December, Patricia called again. This time she talked to Michael directly. He said there were problems with her claim. The company needed more paperwork. He said it would take a few more months. Patricia asked why it was taking so long. Michael told her these things always took time. He sounded annoyed that she was asking questions. By February, Patricia was getting angry. Her kitchen was still burned and broken. She had spent thousands of dollars of her own money on temporary repairs. She called Michael's boss, Robert Chen at Midwest Insurance Group. Robert was surprised to hear from her. He said he would look into her case right away. Robert Chen spent 3 days looking through Michael's files. He could not find Patricia's claim anywhere. He searched the computer system. He looked through paper files. He asked other workers if they knew about the Wells case. Nobody had heard of it. Robert started to get worried. Robert called Patricia and asked her to come to the office. She brought all her papers about the fire and the insurance claim. She had Michael's business card and copies of all the forms he had given her. Robert looked at everything carefully. The forms looked real, but the numbers on them were wrong. Robert discovered that Michael had created fake claim forms. The claim number on Patricia's forms did not exist in the company computer system. Michael had made up the whole thing. But the strangest part was that someone had already paid Patricia's claim. The insurance company had sent $47,000 to fix her kitchen, but Patricia never got the money. Robert called the bank to trace the payment. The money had been sent to an account that belonged to Michael Harding. Michael had stolen Patricia's insurance money. Robert felt sick to his stomach. He had trusted Michael for 8 years. Now he realized Michael had been stealing from the company and from customers. Robert called the police that same day. Detective Lisa Morrison came to the insurance office to hear the story. She was a tall woman with short brown hair who had been a police detective for 15 years. She listened carefully as Robert explained what Michael had done to Patricia Wells. Detective Morrison asked to see all of Michael's files from the past year. Robert gave her boxes of papers and computer records. Lisa spent hours looking through everything. She found more fake claims and missing money. Michael had been very careful, but he made small mistakes. Lisa was good at finding mistakes. The detective discovered that Michael had been stealing money for almost 3 years. He created fake insurance claims for people who never existed. He made up stories about house fires and car accidents that never happened. Then he sent the insurance money to bank accounts that he controlled. He had stolen over $300,000. Lisa found that Michael had opened bank accounts using fake names. He used the stolen money to pay for expensive things. He bought a new car for Julie. He paid for vacations to Florida and California. He bought expensive clothes and jewelry, but he was careful to hide everything from his neighbors and coworkers. While Lisa was investigating Michael's crimes, she heard disturbing stories about Julie. The principal at Lincoln Elementary School called the police station. Dorothy Evans said Julie's behavior at school was getting worse every week. She was screaming at children and throwing things in her classroom. Dorothy told Lisa about the incident last Tuesday. Julie had gotten angry at a 7-year-old boy named Tommy because he could not read a word. She grabbed his book and threw it across the room. Then she started yelling that all the children were stupid and lazy. The other kids started crying. Tommy wet his pants because he was so scared. The school, Nurse Mary, had to take Julie to the office to calm down. Julie locked herself in the supply closet and would not come out for 2 hours. Mary could hear her talking to herself through the door. Julie was saying things that did not make sense. She talked about secrets and being watched by people. Parents were starting to complain about Julie's behavior. Mrs. Anderson said her daughter Emma was afraid to go to school. Emma had nightmares about Miss Julie yelling at her. Mr. Garcia said his son Carlos came home crying every day. Other parents were asking to move their children to different classes. Dorothy had talked to Julie about her behavior several times. Julie always apologized and promised to do better. But then something else would happen. Dorothy was running out of patience. She was thinking about asking Julie to take time off from teaching. Detective Lisa decided to visit Michael and Julie at their house on Maple Street. She wanted to ask Michael about the missing money and Julie about her problems at school. Lisa drove to their house on a Tuesday afternoon in early May. She knocked on the front door, but nobody answered. Lisa walked around the house looking for signs that someone was home. The cars were not in the driveway. Mail was piling up in the Biar mailbox. The grass was getting long and the flowers were dying from lack of water. Lisa asked the neighbors when they had last seen the Hardings. Mrs. Peterson said she had not seen Michael or Julie for 3 weeks. She thought they might be on vacation, but their house looked abandoned. Tom Bradley said the same thing. He had not seen them since late April. The mail was overflowing and newspapers were stacked on the porch. Lisa got a warrant to enter the house. Inside, she found that Michael and Julie had left quickly. Clothes were missing from closets. Personal items were gone. But they had left behind important papers and photographs. Lisa realized that Michael and Julie Harding had run away. Jake Miller and his girlfriend Amy were hiking in Blackhawk State Park on a sunny Saturday morning in May. They had been dating for 2 years and loved spending weekends outdoors. Jake was 26 years old and worked at a bank in Des Moines. Amy was 24 and taught high school math. They often drove to different parks to explore new hiking trails. The weather was perfect for hiking. The sun was shining but not too hot. Birds were singing in the trees and wildflowers were blooming along the trail. Jake and Amy had been walking for about an hour when they decided to leave the main trail to explore a small creek they could hear running through the woods. They pushed through some thick bushes and climbed down a small hill toward the sound of water. The creek was pretty with clear water running over smooth rocks. Amy wanted to take pictures of the wildflowers growing near the water. She was kneeling down to get a good angle when she smelled something terrible. Amy stood up and covered her nose with her shirt. The smell was getting stronger as the wind changed direction. Jake smelled it too. It was sweet and sick, and made them both feel like throwing up. They knew it was the smell of something dead. Jake thought maybe a deer had died near the creek. They followed the smell to a thick group of trees about 50 yards from the creek. Under some fallen logs and old leaves, they saw clothes and bones. Amy screamed and grabbed Jake's arm. They both knew right away that they had found a dead person. Jake told Amy to stay back while he looked closer. The body had been there for a long time. Animals and weather had damaged it badly. Jake could see a blue jacket and black pants. There was a wallet lying nearby, but it was too rotten to touch. Jake took pictures with his phone, and then they both ran back toward their car to call the police. Sheriff Deputy Mike Johnson arrived at the park 30 minutes later. He was followed by Detective Lisa Morrison, who was working on the missing Harding case. Lisa had asked to be called about any dead bodies found in the area. She thought there might be a connection to Michael and Julie's disappearance. The police sealed off the area with yellow tape. The county medical examiner, Dr. Sandra White, came to look at the body. She said the person had been dead for about 6 months. She could tell it was a man about 40 years old. She would need to do tests to figure out who he was and how he died. Dr. White carefully collected the bones and clothes to take back to her office. She found a driver's license in the wallet that was barely readable. The name on it was David Martinez from Des Moines. Detective Lisa recognized the name right away. David Martinez was a private investigator who had been reported missing 6 months ago. Lisa called the Des Moines police to learn more about David Martinez. She talked to Detective Carol Stevens, who had worked on the missing person case. Carol said David was 42 years old and had his own investigation business. He lived alone and had no family nearby. His business partner, Rebecca Foster, had reported him missing in November. Rebecca told the police that David had been working on a big insurance fraud case. He was very excited about it and said he was close to solving it. His last phone call to Rebecca was on November 22nd. He said he was meeting someone who had important information. He never came back to the office after that day. Detective Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. David Martinez was investigating insurance fraud. Michael Harding was stealing money from an insurance company. The timing matched perfectly. David had disappeared right around the time Michael's crimes were getting bigger. Lisa was sure the cases were connected. Dr. White worked for 3 days examining David's remains. She found that he had been killed by several hard hits to the head with a heavy object like a baseball bat or a hammer. The damage to his skull showed that someone had hit him at least 5 times. Dr. White said David probably died quickly from the first few hits. The police searched the area where David's body was found. They looked for anything that might tell them who killed him. Detective Lisa found tire tracks in the soft dirt near the creek. The tracks were from a Honda Accord. Michael Harding drove a blue Honda Accord that matched the size of the tire tracks. Lisa also found something else important. Caught on a thorny bush about 10 feet from where the body was found was a small brown button. It looked like it came from a woman's coat. Lisa put the button in an evidence bag and sent it to the crime lab for testing. The crime lab found DNA on the button from skin cells and hair. The DNA belonged to a woman, but it did not match anyone in the police database. Lisa knew she would need DNA from Julie Harding to see if there was a match. But first, she had to find Julie and Michael. News about finding David's body spread quickly through Cedar Falls and Des Moines. People were shocked that someone had been murdered and left in the state park. Many people remembered reading about David Martinez disappearing 6 months ago. Now they knew he had not just gotten lost or had an accident. Rebecca Foster was heartbroken when she learned that her business partner was dead. She told reporters that David was a good man who helped people find the truth. She said he always tried to help victims of crimes get justice. Rebecca said whoever killed David was evil and needed to be caught. The FBI decided to join the case because it involved multiple crimes across state lines. Agent Catherine Walsh came from the Des Moines FBI office to work with Detective Lisa Morrison. Catherine was an experienced agent who had worked on many murder cases. She brought extra resources and computer experts to help track down Michael and Julie. Catherine ordered a nationwide search for Michael and Julie Harding. Their pictures were sent to police departments in all 50 states. The FBI put their information on the most wanted website. Anyone who saw them was told to call the police immediately and not try to approach them because they might be dangerous. The search for Michael and Julie Harding was now a manhunt for murder suspects. FBI agent James Parker worked in the Behavioral Analysis Unit in Chicago. He studied criminals to understand why they did bad things and how they might act when running from the police. Agent Catherine Walsh called him to help with the Michael and Julie Harding case. She needed to know where they might go and how they would try to hide. James looked at everything the police knew about Michael and Julie. He studied their life in Cedar Falls and the crimes they had committed. He read about Michael's money stealing and Julie's strange behavior at school. He looked at crime scene photos from where David Martinez was found. After 2 days of studying, James had some ideas. James told Catherine that Michael was probably the leader in their crimes. Michael had been planning and stealing for years. He was smart and careful about hiding his crimes. But when David Martinez got close to catching him, Michael became desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices like murder. Julie was different, according to James. She was not a natural criminal. Something was wrong with her mind that made her easy for Michael to control. Julie probably helped Michael hide David's body and run away, but she did not want to do these things. James thought Julie felt guilty and scared about what they had done. The FBI team predicted that Michael and Julie would try to go somewhere warm and far from Iowa. Michael had stolen enough money to live for several months without working. They would probably use fake names and pay for everything with cash. They would try to look like a normal couple starting over in a new place. FBI agents began checking places where people could get fake identification papers. They looked at recent arrests for document fraud in cities across the country. They found that someone matching Michael's description had bought fake driver's licenses and social security cards in Kansas City 3 weeks ago. The trail was getting warmer. Meanwhile, Detective Lisa Morrison got an important phone call from Amanda Roberts in Cedar Falls. Amanda was Julie's younger sister who lived across town. Amanda said she had gotten a strange postcard in the mail. The postcard had a picture of a desert sunset and was mailed from Tucson, Arizona. The message on the postcard was written in Julie's handwriting. It said, "The desert sun reminds me of your garden. Tell Mom I'm sorry about the roses, Jay." Amanda knew it was from Julie because she always signed her name with just the letter J. Also, Julie was the only person who knew about Amanda's flower garden. Lisa drove to Amanda's house to see the postcard. Amanda was 32 years old and worked at the Cedar Falls Library. She was shorter than Julie with brown hair and worried eyes. She said she had not talked to Julie in over a month before Julie and Michael disappeared. Amanda thought her sister had been acting strange all winter. Amanda told Lisa that Julie had called her in February crying and talking about bad dreams. Julie said she was seeing things that were not there. She said Michael was making her do things she did not want to do. But when Amanda asked what things Julie would not explain, she just kept saying she was sorry and that she loved Amanda. The FBI sent the postcard to their crime lab to check for fingerprints and other evidence. They confirmed it was mailed from Tucson on June 2nd. This meant Michael and Julie had been in Arizona at least 2 weeks ago. FBI agents in Arizona began searching for them in the Tucson area. Agent Catherine Walsh flew to Arizona to lead the search personally. She worked with local police to check hotels, motels, and rental car companies. They looked at security camera footage from gas stations and restaurants. They showed Michael and Julie's pictures to store clerks and waitresses throughout the city. The search moved slowly at first. Tucson was a big city with many places to hide. Michael and Julie could be using fake names and staying in cheap motels where nobody asked questions. They might have changed their appearance by cutting and coloring their hair. Catherine knew they needed a lucky break to find them. The break came from an unexpected place. A truck driver named Roy Simpson was eating lunch at a diner in Flagstaff, Arizona, about 2 hours north of Tucson. He was reading a newspaper that had pictures of Michael and Julie on the front page. The headline said, "Wanted for murder" in big letters. Roy looked up from his newspaper and saw a couple working behind the counter at the diner. The man was washing dishes, and the woman was taking orders from customers. Roy looked closer and realized they looked exactly like the people in the newspaper. The man had shorter hair and the woman wore glasses, but Roy was sure it was them. Roy finished his lunch quietly and paid his bill. He went to his truck and called the FBI tip line. He told them he thought he had seen Michael and Julie Harding at the Mountain View Diner in Flagstaff. He gave them the address and said they were working there as employees. Roy said he was certain it was them. FBI agent Catherine Walsh got the call 30 minutes later. She immediately called the Flagstaff police and asked them to watch the diner, but not to arrest anyone yet. Catherine wanted to make sure it was really Michael and Julie before they acted. She did not want to scare them into running away again if it was just two people who looked like them. Catherine drove from Tucson to Flagstaff as fast as she could. On the way, she called Agent James Parker in Chicago to ask for advice about how to arrest them safely. James warned her that desperate fugitives sometimes fought back when cornered. Michael had already killed once and might try to kill again rather than go to prison. Local Flagstaff police watched the diner for 6 hours while Catherine drove north. Officers in unmarked cars parked where they could see the front and back doors of the restaurant. They confirmed that a couple matching Michael and Julie's description were working inside. The man was in the kitchen and the woman was serving customers. When Catherine arrived in Flagstaff, she met with Sheriff Captain Bob Martinez at the police station. Bob was an experienced officer who had arrested many dangerous criminals. They planned how to arrest Michael and Julie without anyone getting hurt. They would wait until the diner was closed for the night when there were no customers inside. Catherine called the diner owner Carl Peterson and explained the situation. Carl was shocked to learn that his quiet employees, John and Jennifer Miller, were actually wanted for murder. Carl said they had been good workers for almost 2 months. They were always on time and never caused any trouble. He could not believe they were dangerous criminals. Carl agreed to help the police arrest Michael and Julie safely. He would close the diner early that night and make sure all the other employees went home. Then the police would surround the building and demand that Michael and Julie surrender. Catherine hoped they would give up without fighting. As the sun set over Flagstaff, the police got ready to end the hunt for Michael and Julie Harding. The Mountain View Diner sat at the end of a quiet street in Flagstaff, Arizona. It was a small restaurant with red and white checkered tables and old country music playing softly from speakers in the ceiling. The smell of coffee and fried food filled the air. Most customers were truck drivers and local workers who came for cheap meals and friendly service. Carl Peterson had owned the diner for 15 years. He was a kind man who often hired people who needed second chances. When John and Jennifer Miller came looking for work 8 weeks ago, Carl could tell they were running from something. But they seemed like good people who needed help, so he gave them jobs. John Miller worked in the kitchen washing dishes and preparing simple food. He was quiet and worked hard without complaining. Jennifer waited on tables and handled the cash register. She was polite to customers but seemed nervous and sad most of the time. Carl thought maybe they had money problems or were getting divorced. Now Carl knew the truth. John and Jennifer Miller were really Michael and Julie Harding. They were wanted for murder and theft. Carl felt scared and confused. These people had been working in his restaurant for 2 months. He had trusted them with his money and his customers. He wondered if they might hurt him when they found out the police were coming. FBI agent Catherine Walsh met with the Flagstaff police team at 5 o'clock that evening. There were 12 officers ready to help with the arrest. They had rifles and protective vests in case Michael and Julie tried to fight. Catherine hoped it would not come to violence, but they had to be prepared for anything. Sheriff Captain Bob Martinez showed Catherine maps of the area around the diner. There was only one road leading to the building, which made it easy to block. Behind the diner was empty desert with nowhere to hide. If Michael and Julie tried to run on foot, the police could catch them quickly with helicopters and dogs. Catherine called Dr. Sarah Mitchell to come help with the arrest. Dr. Mitchell was a crisis negotiator who specialized in talking to people who were having mental breakdowns. Agent James Parker had warned Catherine that Julie Harding might be suffering from serious mental illness. If Julie panicked during the arrest, she might do something dangerous to herself or others. At 7:30 that evening, Carl Peterson closed the diner early. He told his other employees that there was a problem with the plumbing and they needed to go home. The only people left in the building were Carl and the couple he knew as John and Jennifer Miller. Carl felt sick to his stomach knowing what was about to happen. Catherine Walsh and 6 police officers surrounded the diner at 8 o'clock. They turned off the main power to the building so Michael and Julie could not see outside clearly. Police. Cars blocked both ends of the street with their red and blue lights flashing. A helicopter circled overhead with a searchlight pointed at the diner. Catherine used a bullhorn to speak to Michael and Julie inside the building. Her voice echoed off the empty buildings around the diner. She identified herself as an FBI agent and told Michael and Julie that they were surrounded. She said they needed to come outside with their hands up and no one would get hurt. Inside the diner, Michael Harding looked out the window and saw police cars everywhere. His face turned white and his hands started shaking. For 2 months he had thought they were safe. He thought the fake names and new appearance had fooled everyone. Now he realized their hiding was over. Julie Harding began crying and talking to herself when she heard Catherine's voice through the bullhorn. She rocked back and forth in her chair saying, "They found us," over and over again. Michael tried to calm her down, but Julie was having a panic attack. Her breathing was fast and shallow and she could not stop crying. Michael walked to the front door of the diner and opened it slowly. He put his hands above his head and stepped outside. Catherine could see that he was not carrying any weapons. 2 police officers ran to Michael and put handcuffs on his wrists. Michael did not fight or try to run away. He seemed tired and relieved that the chase was finally over. But Julie would not come outside. Catherine could hear her screaming inside the diner. Julie had run into the kitchen and grabbed a large knife from the cutting board. She was holding it against her own throat and threatening to hurt herself. Carl Peterson was hiding behind the counter, afraid that Julie might attack him. Catherine called for Dr. Sarah Mitchell to take over the situation. Dr. Mitchell was a small woman with gray hair and a calm voice. She had talked to hundreds of people who were having mental breakdowns. She knew how to speak to someone who was scared and confused without making things worse. Dr. Mitchell used the bullhorn to talk to Julie. She spoke slowly and gently. She told Julie that she was not in trouble and that everyone wanted to help her. She said Julie was sick and needed medical treatment, not punishment. Dr. Mitchell promised that no one would hurt Julie if she put down the knife and came outside. Julie screamed back that she did not want to go to prison. She said Michael had made her do bad things that she did not want to do. She talked about seeing dead people in her dreams and hearing voices that told her to hurt herself. Julie said she was sorry for everything that had happened and just wanted the voices to stop. For 6 hours, Dr. Mitchell talked to Julie through the bullhorn. Sometimes Julie seemed to understand what Dr. Mitchell was saying. She would stop crying and listen carefully. But then the voices in her head would start again and Julie would become confused and scared. During one of their conversations, Julie said something that shocked everyone listening. She told Dr. Mitchell that David Martinez was not the first person they had killed. She said there were others buried in different places. Julie said Michael had forced her to help him hide the bodies and clean up the blood. Catherine Walsh felt her heart sink when she heard Julie's words. If there were more victims, the case was much bigger than anyone had realized. She radioed FBI headquarters to send more agents to Iowa to start searching for additional bodies. This was turning into one of the worst serial murder cases in the state's history. At 2 a.m, Julie finally became too tired to keep fighting. Her voice was hoarse from screaming and crying. The knife fell from her hands and clattered on the kitchen floor. Dr. Mitchell told the police it was safe to go inside and arrest Julie. 2 female police officers entered the diner carefully. They found Julie sitting on the floor in the kitchen, rocking back and forth like a child. She did not resist when they put handcuffs on her wrists. Julie kept saying she was sorry and asking for her mother. The officers were gentle with her because they could see she was having a mental breakdown. Julie was taken to Flagstaff General Hospital for psychiatric evaluation before being sent to jail. Doctors said she was suffering from severe mental illness and was not able to understand reality clearly. They said she would need months of treatment before she could even stand trial for her crimes. Michael Harding was taken directly to the county jail. He refused to speak to anyone without a lawyer present. Catherine Walsh hoped that Michael would eventually agree to cooperate with police and tell them where the other victims were buried. Families deserved to know what happened to their missing loved ones. The hunt for Michael and Julie Harding was over, but the investigation into their crimes was just beginning. The courtroom in Cedar Falls was packed with reporters and family members of the victims. Michael Harding sat at the defense table wearing an orange jail uniform and handcuffs. His lawyer was a public defender named Robert Kim, who had tried to convince Michael to plead not guilty. But Michael had decided to tell the truth about everything he had done. Judge Martha Williams had been a judge for 20 years, but had never seen a case this disturbing. 4 people were dead because of Michael's greed and violence. Their families deserved justice and answers about why their loved ones had been murdered. Judge Williams was determined to make sure Michael paid for his crimes. Prosecutor Janet Davis stood up to read the charges against Michael. He was accused of first-degree murder in the deaths of David Martinez, Jennifer Walsh, Steve Murphy, and Brian Kelly. He was also charged with stealing over $300,000 from Midwest Insurance Group. The prosecutor said Michael had killed anyone who threatened to expose his crimes. Michael's lawyer asked the judge if his client could make a statement. Michael stood up slowly and looked at the families of his victims sitting in the front row. Some were crying and others stared at him with anger in their eyes. Michael took a deep breath and began to tell his story. Michael said his crimes started small. He began taking money from insurance claims 3 years ago when Julie lost her teaching job temporarily. They had bills to pay and Michael panicked about losing their house. He thought he would steal a few $1,000s and pay it back when Julie started working again. But stealing money became easier each time Michael did it. He created fake insurance claims and sent the money to secret bank accounts. He bought nice things for Julie and took expensive vacations. Michael said he felt powerful when he had lots of money. He liked the feeling so much that he could not stop stealing even when Julie got her job back. The first person Michael killed was Jennifer Walsh in 2019. Jennifer was an insurance investigator who noticed problems with some of Michael's claims. She started asking questions about fake paperwork and missing money. Michael knew Jennifer would eventually figure out what he was doing, and he would go to prison. Michael met Jennifer at a coffee shop and told her he had information about insurance fraud at his company. He said he wanted to help her investigation. Jennifer trusted Michael because he worked at the company and seemed honest. They drove together to an empty warehouse where Michael said he had hidden evidence. At the warehouse, Michael hit Jennifer in the head with a tire iron he had hidden in his car. She died immediately from the blow to her skull. Michael buried her body in the woods outside Cedar Falls. He told Julie that Jennifer had been transferred to another city. Julie believed him and never asked more questions. The second victim was Steve Murphy in 2021. Steve was a contractor who had been hired to investigate a suspicious fire claim. Steve was very good at finding evidence of insurance fraud. He discovered that Michael had paid someone to burn down a building and then filed a fake claim for the damage. Michael invited Steve to his house to discuss the investigation. Michael said he had more information that would help Steve's case. When Steve arrived, Michael attacked him in the garage with a baseball bat. Julie heard the noise and came outside to see what was happening. She found Michael standing over Steve's dead body. Julie screamed and tried to run back to the house, but Michael grabbed her arm. He told Julie that Steve was going to send them both to prison. Michael said Julie had helped him create fake paperwork, so she was guilty too. He convinced Julie that they had to work together to hide Steve's body, or they would both be arrested. That night, Michael and Julie drove Steve's body to a lake 30 miles from Cedar Falls. They weighted it down with rocks and sunk it in the deepest part of the lake. Julie cried the whole time and kept saying she wanted to call the police. But Michael threatened to tell everyone that Julie had helped him kill Steve if she did not stay quiet. The third victim was Brian Kelly in 2022. Brian was an accountant who worked for the State Insurance Commission. His job was to audit insurance companies to make sure they were not cheating customers. Brian found evidence that someone at Midwest Insurance Group was stealing large amounts of money. Brian contacted Michael and asked to meet with him to discuss suspicious transactions. Michael agreed to meet Brian at a restaurant but suggested they drive to a quiet place where they could talk privately. Michael took Brian to the same warehouse where he had killed Jennifer Walsh 3 years earlier. Michael killed Brian the same way he had killed the others. He hit him in the head with a tire iron until Brian stopped moving. This time, Julie was not surprised when Michael came home with blood on his clothes. She had learned not to ask questions about Michael's business trips. She helped him wash the blood from his car and burn his clothes. The last victim was David Martinez in 2022. David was the private investigator who came closest to exposing Michael's crimes. David had been hired by Midwest Insurance Group to find out who was stealing their money. He was very good at following paper trails and finding evidence. David called Michael and said he wanted to meet to discuss some insurance claims. David said he had found some problems with Michael's paperwork and needed to ask him some questions. Michael knew that David had discovered his crimes and would turn him into the police. Michael agreed to meet David at Black Hawk State Park. He told David they could talk privately there without being interrupted by other people. When David arrived, Michael was waiting with a hammer he had brought from home. He attacked David immediately and hit him many times in the head until he was sure David was dead. Michael buried David's body under some logs and leaves near the creek. He thought no one would ever find it there, but hikers discovered David's remains 6 months later and the police investigation began. Michael realized it was only a matter of time before they would be caught. After Michael finished his confession, the courtroom was completely silent. Everyone was shocked by the cold way he described killing 4 innocent people. The families of the victims were crying and holding each other. Judge Williams had to take a break because she was too upset to continue. When court resumed, Michael pleaded guilty to all charges. He said he was sorry for what he had done but knew that saying sorry could not bring back the people he had killed. Judge Williams sentenced Michael to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He would never be free again. Julie's trial was different because of her mental illness. Doctors who examined her said she was suffering from severe bipolar disorder with psychotic symptoms. The disease made it hard for Julie to tell the difference between what was real and what was in her imagination. The doctor said Michael had taken advantage of Julie's illness to manipulate her into helping him. Julie's lawyer argued that she was not responsible for her actions because of her mental illness. But the prosecutor said Julie knew it was wrong to help hide dead bodies and steal money. The jury had to decide if Julie was a victim of Michael's manipulation or a willing partner in his crimes. After hearing all the evidence, the jury found Julie guilty of being an accessory to murder and conspiracy to commit fraud, but they recommended that she receive treatment for her mental illness instead of a long prison sentence. Judge Williams sentenced Julie to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years if she continued taking medication for her mental illness. The families of the victims were not satisfied with Julie's sentence. They thought she should spend the rest of her life in prison like Michael. But mental health experts said Julie was also a victim of Michael's abuse and deserved a chance to get better with proper treatment. Michael Harding was sent to a maximum security prison in Iowa where he spends 23 hours a day in a small cell. He has no visitors and receives no mail. Other prisoners know he is a child killer and wife abuser, so they will not talk to him. Michael will die alone in prison. Julie Harding was sent to a secure psychiatric facility where she receives medication and therapy for her mental illness. Doctors say she is slowly getting better and beginning to understand the terrible things she helped Michael do. Julie writes letters to the families of the victims asking for forgiveness, but none of them respond. The house on Maple Street where Michael and Julie used to live was torn down by the city. Nobody wanted to buy a house where murderers had lived. The lot is empty now except for Julie's rose bushes, which still bloom every summer. Neighbors take care of the roses as a way to remember the victims who died. Detective Lisa Morrison was promoted to sergeant for her work solving the case. She still thinks about the 4 people who died and wishes she could have caught Michael before he killed them. Lisa knows that evil people like Michael Harding are rare, but when they exist, they can destroy many innocent lives. The case changed how insurance companies investigate fraud. They now require 2 people to approve large payments and have better systems for tracking suspicious claims. The changes came too late to save Jennifer Walsh, Steve Murphy, Brian Kelly, and David Martinez, but might prevent future murders.